but we have so much interwoven identification with our own names as to who we are that when we remember someone's name, it gives them a signal that we know them. And when we, depending on what we want to do with that person or that interaction, if we want them to feel like we know them, then when we use their name, we already have created more trust. Oh, this person knows me. They know my name.
What if there are things we never had the opportunity to learn? We've all been to school or training, but there are things they never taught us that actually make a powerful difference in life. I'm here to share with you all the pieces you've been missing: mindset, health, success, and more. And we'll all learn together from guests along the way. We may not have learned it the traditional way, but oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do things differently. OMG, my friends, welcome to the latest episode. I am excited about today because I think that you're going to find this to be a really interesting topic with also a lot of practical application. So if you've ever heard people talk about being present in the moment, or the present is all you have, the past is done, and the future isn't here yet, we hear these things all the time, but I'm not sure we actually understand the power of this idea of presence. And if you remember a few episodes back, I talked about the impression of increase. And in that episode, I gave a little story about remembering people's names and how important that was. So we're going to come back to that today in a practical way because my guest is Lisa Joy Glassman, and she is a musician's performance coach and dynamic movement expert. She also has over 15 years of experience as a licensed massage therapist, yoga teacher, and personal trainer. And she coaches students to identify where their resistance is and learn practical actions to remove physical and mental obstacles, stress, and pain to be able to perform at the highest level. And her website is activepotential.com, so you'll see that in the show notes. But I am really excited about what we're going to talk about today. So welcome, Lisa Joy.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Thanks for having me on the OMG Teach Me podcast.
Absolutely. I'm excited about this. This, I think, is a really interesting topic. So we're going to start with what I always start with, which is I always like to know people's stories, because I think when we get involved in careers and businesses that we feel passionate about, there's usually some sort of reason behind that we worked through something or we had some brilliant observation during our lifetime. So how did you end up studying and working with people on presence and overall wellness?
So I think I always wanted to work with people. I think back to, every year in elementary school, your teacher would ask you, you did project, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember being at a loss, honestly. I was interested in so many different things. I loved science, I loved reading, I loved math even. I loved doing things. I loved dancing, I loved sports and all these things. And I just never really knew. And I used to pick things randomly. But by about sixth grade, I used to just answer the truth, which is just, I want to be happy, which of course is not like being a paleontologist or being a firefighter or a teacher or whatever. But it was really the thing that I wanted. It was the thing that I was striving for. And I'm pretty naturally happy. I will go towards the joy and the beauty in life easily. And when I got out of college, I took a job and then I took a second job, and I just knew that I could not sit at a desk. That wasn't going to be the thing. And so during that second job, I worked at the Jewish Community Center in Washington, D.C. There was a gym. I was in the midst of playing rugby. That was my main hobby. It was the thing I really loved. And so I decided to become a personal trainer. And I transitioned about a year later to doing that full time and opening up my own business. And then that's how we get to here 15 plus years later.
You know what? I love that you said you're a naturally happy person and you go towards the joy, because I know that so many people struggle with that. I've done whole episodes on trying to find the fun in life. So I feel lucky is what I'm saying, that's how you naturally work, because that's amazing.
It is amazing. And even though I have that, I feel that that's an innate part of my, being here in this incarnation in this life. This does not mean that I don't have and haven't had bouts of depression and overwhelm and anxiety, and really have had mental and emotional struggles for sure, as well as physical pain from injuries and physical pain from mental gunk and junk. But even in, I say, the darkest times, it's like, oh, the sun is shining. Oh, wow. Okay.
Good.
Um, and I think that probably taps into our topic that we're going to be talking about,
Yeah.
which is about being present. So, yeah.
Yeah, it really absolutely does. And I mean, if someone is short of time and stopped the episode right now, I think they would have learned something because those little moments of joy, where even if you're having just the worst day, you can say, oh, look at the sky, is so pretty today. It's powerful, and more so than we realize, for sure.
I was just going to say that noticing what is in the moment and is really, this is the key, is allowing yourself to notice what is true right now. And so that example of the sky or anything that's in front of you, or we talk about gratitude, taking a moment to think, what is going well? Or what am I grateful for right now? It allows us to realize the truth, which is what is happening right now. And that allows us to zap in or dial into the present moment and to not be caught up in our headspace. And so that is very powerful because it aligns with the current state of your being and the current state of what's happening. And it's a unification between you and everything around you. And that is very powerful.
So that's what we mean when we say, or when we hear the term presence, or being present in the moment, is what you're saying.
Yes, is to literally experience exactly what's happening right now. And I just mentioned two pathways. One is noticing and another one is gratitude. And I think we're going to get into some more of the nitty-gritty of the techniques to get there, but these are two ways. And the noticing can be done visually with your eyes. It can be done, through any of the senses auditorily. So maybe you hear something that's pleasant. It could be a bird chirping. It could be a song. I think we'll talk about that as well. You can do this through your sense of touch, right? It could be you have an item that you like to hold on to. Maybe you just love the shirt you're wearing. It's super soft. Or you love the chair that you're like, I'm sitting in this chair that I love. And so you can have a sensory experience that way. It could be through taste, something that we don't always think about being present when we're eating, but if we're eating something and we notice what we're eating, we notice what it tastes like, that's what's happening right now. And so that can also help us to realize, oh, that's very pleasant. I love the way that tastes. I'm really grateful for this. And that's what I'm doing. I'm eating right now, or I'm drinking, I'm sipping my pumpkin latte as we move into the fall, or whatever it is.
Yep.
And we smell it, right? So we can have the experience through our senses. Oh, this is a candle I like, or I love the smell of the fresh air in the fall or the spring or the summer, whatever it is. And so through our senses, we have the ability to notice and to notice what's happening through our senses right now. And that allows us to be present.
So it's interesting because I've definitely heard that said about food in particular, that if we actually would pay attention to what we're eating when we're eating it, it's healthy as well, because then maybe we don't overeat as much and we just enjoy what we're eating. Not to get us off on a tangent, but it's interesting that maybe if I went like a level deeper from what you're saying, a lot of times we're just sort of drifting through and we're not paying attention to what's going on around us. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is why there's so much advice about, not mindlessly eating, not eating while you're trying to do something else. People will often combine activities, and there could be very, very much benefit, right? Like connecting with people, having lunch with people and having a conversation. Now, I'm
Right.
not saying that those don't have
Right.
merit, but it also has merit to just simply, to take out some of the extra and to just experience what's happening right now through your senses. And if you experience a lot of pressure to multitask, or a lot of your pressure comes from this notion that we must deal with so many things at once, and then of course we feel like we can never actually deal with any of them, they never come to completion, they're hard to keep track of, right? And then that spins us into a cycle. That idea of just taking one thing at a time, and we do have to eat, and we do need fuel. We can go a little while, but at some point we do have to fuel the body. And so it provides us a daily or multi-daily opportunity to use that act and those acts as an ability to become present.
Interesting. And I'm thinking of all the times when I've kind of floated through things and not noticed what was around me. So I think this is gonna, even just to maybe help us all start just pausing and looking around every now and then is going to be a difference, I think. So let me flip that then. What are the things that might be happening to us, or what might we notice that tells us that we're not being present in the moment? What are some things we might recognize?
I think, recognizing stress, I think could be a way in. A lot of times, and it's interesting too, because we'll say, I'm so stressed, I'm so stressed, I'm so stressed out, I feel overwhelmed, but like then what you're talking about, just taking it just one step. Okay, I feel stressed. What am I stressed about? And then, oh, there's so many things. Okay, but like, could you just list the things? Because then if we can list the things, we come into an awareness and identification, right? Where we're actually telling our mind to stop and to say, okay, just slow down. What are the things? Okay, now we can identify things. They may all have merit, 100%. But once we can start to separate and see them, then we might be able to address them. When they're just swirling in this sort of generalized experience, it's very difficult to actually address any one of them. And it keeps us in a cycle of not being present. So I think that listening to your own statements or your own feelings, just to notice what they are and to come in a state of noticing, that could be one way to say, okay, this is taking me out of being present, and it's also stopping me from being able to do whatever it is that I want to do or intend to do.
Yeah, it's interesting because I have learned in the mindset work that I've done that and this just happens to work for me because it took me a long time to understand how to recognize feelings in myself. I'm a very analytical, logical person, so I had to figure that out. But now I understand that if I can recognize, okay, what do I feel like right now? Like, what is actually bothering me? Do I feel, sad, or do I feel worried, or whatever, frustrated? And then maybe go back and say, well, why, what's creating that? And so that's kind of what you're saying, is just try to recognize, where is it coming from, right?
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, I just want to say, like, I have these tools, I understand how this works, and yet I'm a very analytical person. I experience overwhelm and stress. So, it's not perfect, right? We're works
Of
in
course.
progress. But once we can identify and recognize, we can actually really play into if it is our strength, or, and it could be really big strength to be an analytical person. It could be really help us. We use our intelligence, we use our thoughtfulness, and that helps us like achieve our goals. So we can recognize, and then we can let the mind go with it. We can say, okay, let's analyze it. Like, what are the
Mm,
thoughts that lead to this? Okay, what does this make me feel? Okay, why do I feel this way? What are some possibilities? What are some potentials? And so I think for very analytical people, then writing it down or typing it out, whatever works best for you. But again, this starts to get us to name what's happening. Let's write out all the reasons, and then we can be analytical. We can read it over and look at it, and look at it as a puzzle, look at it as a picture, and it can become interesting even to us,
yeah.
which could then maybe satisfy like some other pieces of us that were like, I don't want to deal with my feelings. Like, I'm analytical. Well, okay, cool. Like, you're analytical. Let's let's be analytical about it. So there's ways of working with some of our nature or our tendencies or proclivities and still doing the work.
Yeah. I like that you said be curious about it, or you said something like that, because I also think that we tend to beat ourselves up a lot when we're trying to recognize these things. And maybe being curious prevents that a little bit.
It can definitely be a reframe. And I think that beating ourselves up and feeling shame over lack or shame over lack of success, shame over having even been fearful when you know you could do something or you know you've done it better, right? Like, and so for me personally, like I battle this perfectionism where I'm like, but I know that I could have done it and I know that I have the skills, but I didn't. And so, like, I'm bad or I'm this or that. And all of that, the whole thing, it all has nothing to do with the present moment. And so being able to interrupt these cycles that we can get in our minds and to recognize like, whoa, lot going on in there. Wait, am I sitting in this chair? Like, what's going on around me? Is there a person in front of me that I'm actually having a conversation with, but I'm busy over here in this space? And then, right, you can even get, oh man, I'm supposed to be present and I didn't do it. It's like, okay, again, it's just like, can you identify that there's this like demonic or negative voice that has nothing to do with anything that's actually going on in the present moment? And that anything that you think about the past or any of the blaming or shaming that you're doing to yourself, whether it's your own voice or voices of people from your past or experience that sound like them talking to you, none of those people are actually in front of you. And so, that's a really nice reframe to be more curious about it. Or, hey, that's so interesting that that's happening. What's happening there? Oh, all right, that's that. Okay, and then we can start to release that. And we can also have we can get in this too. Like there can be techniques to release that are
Right.
also in the present.
Right. Don't you wish sometimes that living well had a set of easy steps to follow, or maybe a handbook for success? There are certainly many books out there that help, but wouldn't we love some easy tips that we can try right now? I've created for you 7 days of easy, free tips for living well. We're talking about sleep, food, movement, mindset, and a lot more. Even if you pick a few of these suggestions and give them a try, you will be starting down a path to amazing change over time. Make sure to go to www.bit.ly/OMG Teach Me podcast and sign up for your 7-day journey with me. All right, so let me think about which direction we want to go now, because I know there's a couple things we were definitely going to talk about, but there's all sorts of things that I want to ask you now. So let's see. Okay, I think I want to make sure that we don't miss this topic, and then we'll maybe wrap back around to techniques for sure. So, a few episodes back, I did an episode about leaving others with the impression of increase. And that had to do with smiling at people, remembering their name, remembering things about them, doing something kind. And it could be very small things, right? We're not talking about having to do grand gestures all the time. It's such a powerful thing. And so one of those pieces is what really resonated with me personally, because I do not have a good history with remembering people's names, but also with other people who were asking me about it. How in the world do I get better at remembering people's names? And when you and I started talking about presence, this is something that you said, you know what, this is related. So let's just tell me a little bit about why that's so powerful that we can remember someone's name and use someone's name, Lisa Joy, and how does that relate to presence?
Yeah. So when we use someone's name, we give them a signal that we have recognized them, that we see them, that we have heard them, that the interaction of being with them was important. Now, forgetting someone's name is not to say that it totally negates that. We don't remember everyone's name. And, people usually will leave like, I'm so sorry I forgot your name, but I remember meeting you, right? As another acknowledgement, like, I remember meeting you. I remember we had a conversation, or I remember any identifying factor about remembering being with the person can be an acknowledgement. But because our names are so important to our identity, even if we don't like our name is used so much to identify, like, I am this being and my name is Lisa Joy. That is who I am, right? Even though it's not who I am, it's my name. But we have so much interwoven identification with our own names as to who we are, that when we remember someone's name, it gives them a signal that we know them. And when we, depending on what we want to do with that person or that interaction, if we want them to feel like we know them, then when we use their name, we already have created more trust. Oh, this person knows me. They know my name. I am more interested in feeling more trustworthy and more open to this interaction. So, taking it from there, again, depending on what you want to do, that might be even more powerful to have that experience of a level of trust.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I've noticed as I've been thinking about this over the past little while that I don't use people's names that often. And I've had a few experiences lately where people have used my name and I've gone, oh my gosh, that feels really good. Why am I not using people's names? So it's just very interesting to think about because I agree with what you're saying. We're showing people that maybe that they matter or that we see them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's some techniques to remembering people's names for sure. But one is to just be present with them, to look at them, right? Right, to use your senses in the present moment to experience the person and to connect it to their name. To look at them and say their name at the same time. Hi, Cheryl. And I'm looking at you. I'm getting some idea of your features, your eyes, your face, what you look like, who you are, that is this person that has this name. And that can really increase your ability to remember, because we know that visual memory is so powerful, which we know even with forgetting people's names. We'll say, so many people say, I remember your face. I remember meeting you. I just don't remember your name. Well, yeah, because the visual was already so powerful that that
Mhm.
is stored there. So if we can just connect the name to the visual, then we've got a nice piece. Restating the person's name so that you're committing their name into your own vocal power can also help you. And then whatever you say with the name when you repeat it, like restating something they say or the question that you're about to ask them, now that information also gets attached to their name, and it becomes a technique that is very powerful for memory. Because now, instead of saying, I remember we talked about such and such, but I don't remember your name. Now you say, I remember I talked to this woman, Cheryl, about X, Y, and Z, right? And so that it also just gets solidified into the memory bank.
Interesting. So the name becomes kind of a part of that sentence or a part of that information that your brain is saving and it saves it together.
It saves it together.
Huh, very interesting. Very interesting. And I've definitely heard to say people's names once you are introduced, and I recognize that I need to do better with that. But the present thing is very interesting because as you were saying, be present when you're meeting someone and you're learning their name and see the details about them. I was thinking, I wonder how many of us really do that up until now that we know to do it, because we're going on with the conversation. And sometimes we're guilty of thinking about what we need to say next and, thinking about what's going on in the room. And so this is an interesting thing for all of us to recognize. I think that when we learn someone's name, did we really look like, what are they wearing? What do they really look like? What are we talking about? Yeah, that's kind of new.
Yeah, well, and that's great. I'm glad that you're noticing that. And this is again about, recognizing what's going on in your mind versus what's actually happening in your environment. And this is what I think about direct eye contact. Now, people have all sorts of reasons why direct eye contact may or may not be something that they do. But I just want to recommend that if it's possible for you, if it's in your capable realm, that taking the opportunity to just try, especially upon meeting someone, especially when you get their name, to actually look at them, this will also help you eliminate some of that distraction. So if you're in a very busy room, let's say it's a networking environment, party or concert, where there's like so much stimulus, if you are going to actually be interested in the person, you want to spend that time having that connection, looking at them is going to help you cut out some of what's going on around you. And if you can like really look at them and really look at their eyes, then some of that visual stuff will get fuzzy around the edges, the way like a special camera filter might do for you. Because our brains are processing every piece of information through this prefrontal cortex. And so we see everything, but we don't necessarily remember or have a need for everything. Our brain does all this stuff that like tosses out a bunch of stuff and it only commits to memory what we put. So if I'm talking to you, Cheryl, but I'm looking over here at what else is going on, then my brain doesn't understand necessarily that I want to be processing and focused on here because I'm giving the visual attention over here. I'm listening to a conversation, or I'm giving my attention over to what's going on in the background in my mind. And so it's, my brain, your brain's figuring out, okay, we need that. We don't need that. We need that. We need that. We're going to take this, right? And so all of that's happening
Yeah.
milliseconds, right? And it's not all conscious. It's like our amazing brain is doing this for us, but we can give it direction by looking right at the person, right into their eyes and say, okay, focusing on you. And it's a practice. You might realize you did, and then you're over there. Oh, okay. No beating yourself up. Oh, I'm not looking at you. Okay, I'm gonna look back at you. Again, it could be that
Yeah.
that inquiry, that interest, like, oh, I'm working on eye contact. I'm working on paying attention. I'm working on getting better at listening. Okay, I'm working on it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And I'm just going to throw this out there, but I wonder if one of the challenges that many of us might have to being present, which is really still what this is all revolving around, is that I think sometimes we might think if we let go of the stuff running in our heads telling us you got to do this and this and this, then either we're going to forget, or it's not going to get done, or it's going to be done too late or something. And I think maybe also what we're saying is that's just not true. It's not true that we have to hold it in our brain all the time and not be present in whatever's happening around us.
Yeah. So I think one, right, again, we can just like take all of that and just be like, this is fear. I'm afraid. I'm afraid I'm going to forget. I'm afraid I'm not going to get it done. I'm worried, right? It's all fear. So, right, we can all dial that back that way, right? All of those statements. But again, right, this is about techniques. So some people are like really prideful and want to hold on to this idea that they got to keep everything in their head. They don't need to write things down. They don't need to have a plan. They're free spirit. They don't like it, right? All these identifying factors that are all not true, because we're not any of those things. They're just habits and patterns. And so if you are that kind of person, and this I think especially happens as we age, all of a sudden we start to become more forgetful. And this could be somewhat age related and somewhat related to just the fact that our world has become significantly more distracting through our digital technology and media. And so the things that we were able to do at some point in our life that we're like always going back to just might not work in this moment, in this day and age. Like, oh, the world is more distracting. We have so many things impinging upon us. Might need to start keeping a list. Keep a list. We don't have to think about the list, because when we're ready to address the list, then we'll go address it. But you're not going to be addressing any of those things you're trying to hold on to and remember while you're busy talking to someone, because you're busy talking to someone.
Yes, 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 yes. And why are we bothering to talk to someone if we're not going to pay attention to what we're talking about?
Exactly. And by the way, that doesn't have to be a rhetorical question. Like, that can be a legitimate question. Like, why am I talking to this person? Like, why am I paying attention? Like, is this what I want to be doing? There's nothing wrong with also the answer being no. And then you might start, that might be part of your path of making different choices, because recognizing how you're spending your time in the present moment is all of it, right? It's not just, oh, I'm recognizing my mind. It's like, oh, it could be like, oh, I'm recognizing I'm scrolling on my phone. It would be like, oh, like I've been here and I'm just schmoozing and I'm just mindlessly bopping along. But all I can think about is doing these three tasks. And it's like, oh, I'm feeling the stress of time. Like, well, stop, go, get out of there. You know, if this isn't going to serve you, if this isn't important to you, if this isn't what you want to do, you know, barring some obligations, if you don't have to, and what you really want to do is this other thing, then yeah, go do that.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, so I'm looking at the time and I'm thinking this has been fascinating conversation, but let me just check with you. Are there any techniques that we haven't talked about? Because we've sprinkled in quite a few things that you were thinking you definitely wanted our listeners to know about being present and improving how we can be present. Or do you think we've covered it?
I think that we've covered some techniques. I think that I really talked about experiencing your senses and allowing yourself to be present through the senses. But I think that, you know, just to come in and talk about the breath for a moment, that if people need techniques, like they're like, okay, you know, Lisa Joy, Carol, this is all very fascinating, but I just can't get my mind to stop. I can't. It's going and going and going and going and going. And great sunlight, who cares? Like, whatever, you know, that might not be your thing. So, working with the breath in particular, I think is really a way to dial into the present moment. And I like to work with the senses and with the breath. So, physically feeling the air travel into your body, feeling the movement of air in your nose, feeling the movement of air in your throat, feeling your body expand and contract in space. If you're against the back of a chair, let's say, you can feel your body move against the chair. You may put a hand on your body, and putting your hands on any part of your body can help you just be like, oh, right, I live in a body. I live in this body. This body is mine. This body is breathing. That's how I know I'm alive. And so, techniques to experience the breath and experience it moving in your body bring us into the present moment, because that's happening right now. And that can be a very powerful tool, or I'll say a toolbox category, because of course there's so many ways to work with the breath. We don't have time to dive into all of that, but I do share those, and I have those techniques. I have a whole breathing 101 course that people can
Excellent.
do. Yeah, so if people are interested in like, well, how do I do this? That is definitely available as well. But that can be a really powerful tool, and it does also bring us in touch with our nature and our aliveness, because again, we just like food as fuel, like we have to breathe. We get like a minute or two, and then that's about it. After that, we got to get back to it. We have to be breathing to be alive. So it really demands our attention into the present moment.
I like that. And this is something that I am not very knowledgeable about, but I have heard a couple of people talk about recently, just kind of the tip of the iceberg. So thank you for making sure to bring that up, because I can see how even just pausing to feel, as you said, feel ourselves taking the breath, feel the air going in and out, it really does sort of readjust all the outside stuff that was racing at us, maybe. And so if this is intriguing to you and you're listening, then go to Lisa Joy's website and find that Breathing 101 course, because that's very interesting. And I think it could help people for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it has everything at activepotential.com. So all of that
Perfect.
information is found there.
Perfect. All right. So we're going to wrap it up, but I know this is going to be a little bit of a chat for us too, because of what you do, which is fascinating, by the way. But as I told you, I always ask my guests what your favorite song is to lift your mood, raise your vibration, get you feeling a little bit better. And so I do want to know what song you pick, but I also know that music has a lot to do with present. So tell us a little bit about that too as we talk about this.
Sure. And I love it. I checked out the list and I love this list that's growing already, full of awesome, positive, uplifting songs. I already downloaded it to my own offline Spotify section. So
Excellent. And it's
Yeah,
so eclectic too, because everybody says something different. So that's fun. Yeah.
for sure. So for me, the power of music is incredibly healing. And because music has so much going on in it, the vibrations of sound and the intention behind it to like be expressive, often to be expressive in a loving way, but just to be truthful and honest in expression. And then the combination of notes and rests and instruments, all of that really demands our attention. It like commands us into the present moment. And so for me, that's why I started to work with musicians and in the music community as a way to give back to this experience of being healed. And music has scored my whole life from early childhood, recorded music and playing music. And we can feel the vibrations when we play music. We can feel the vibrations in live music or even coming off the speakers. And that too is literally running through our bodies, and it changes us all the way down to a cellular level. And so for me, music is very powerful and very healing.
I love it. And the very first episode of this podcast I did talking about everything is energy. And that has to do with the vibration down to the cellular level. And it's from one of my favorite Albert Einstein quotes. And I came up with this music idea, and I'm not sure I ever even put it together, to be honest with you. I just somehow knew. But of course, the vibration of feeling the music is exactly that. It's energy and vibration, and it changes how we're feeling, how we're interacting with the world, because everything is about vibration.
Absolutely. So for me, to add to this playlist, one of my favorite bands, probably my favorite right now, is the band Cabinet out of Northeast Pennsylvania. And they have a song called Silver Sun. And so I'd love to add that to your playlist. It's for me, it's very uplifting. It helps me just get in a groove and allows me to ride that groove and get moving, and it feels very motivating. And so happy to add that to the Uplift playlist.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait to listen to it. I'm fascinated that there's a band called Cabinet. So I'm excited to listen for sure. Thank you for that. All right. So I think I can safely say that we have gone through quite a lot that we do not learn in school today. We learn the facts in school, right? And maybe we learn the brain science, but I don't think we ever learn anything about how to be present in the moment and about how many different aspects there are of that and how powerful it is in life. So I'm so happy that we could talk about all of that. And I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I really appreciate it too. And yeah, we definitely touch on these things, but in our, traditional education, as far as, self-management and self-care and interpersonal skills outside of just, going with the rules, we really don't. So I'm really happy to share here on the OMG Teach Me podcast today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa Joy. And I will put all of your contact information in the show notes and on social media. So anybody who's looking for Lisa Joy can find her at Active Potential on Instagram as well. So awesome. Thanks again.
All right. Peace.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, I would be so honored if you would take a moment, leave a rating, leave a review, or take a screenshot and share on your social media. Let's get this message out further into the world. Now it's time to head down to the show notes to see the resources I mentioned. We may not have learned this before, but it sure is powerful now.